Prime Video has Bye Bye Barry, a brand new documentary on his career. I caught it the other day and absolutely loved it. A lot of the stuff you'll see, you might already know, but it also reaffirmed a few things about Barry Sanders, that he might be the most humble superstar that you will ever come across in history. It was remarkable that, in this day and age of wanting to be seen and social media, it's all about me, the likes, the loves, the what have you, the looks. Barry Sanders was none of that. He was just about football and being a great football player. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved how they did it. Essentially, they followed Barry over to London because when he retired, and I don't know if you remember, he retired by fax.
Yeah.
There was no press conference. He retired by fax. And what happened was he was on his way to London, England for a trip the day before training camp. And people recognized him on the plane. And I don't know if there's a journalist or whatever was on the plane, but anyways, realized, what is Barry Sanders doing in London? And there were media at the airport and wondering what's going on. And he thought it was going to be quiet. He could just go and that's how it happened. It was wild, to say the least. I remember I heard the report on the radio that day. I forget where I was exactly, but I thought it was a joke. I was like, how can Barry Sanders retire? He is so close to breaking the all-time rushing record, which he was. I think he was 1,400 yards short.
Yeah.
And at that time, he was averaging that each and every year with the Lions.
And he hadn't started, his production hadn't started to decline. It wasn't like he was falling off physically or anything like that.
Not at all. But as I explained, I don't want to give everything away, but it was just fascinating. The passion had gone. There were a lot of talk about, he didn't want to break it because his dad's favorite player was Jim Brown, and Jim Brown walked away early too. There was a lot of these similarities and parallels. And so there was all these conspiracy theories. And
it's true. That was a time when I was driving a lot and I'd had the radio on all the time. Jim Rome followed that on a daily basis. Not that he tried to sensationalize anything or anything, but, he was trying to give us the scoop of what was happening with Barry Sanders on a daily basis. And I know for me, I found it just completely compelling. And at the time, because it didn't make any sense. It just didn't make any sense. And I think even to this day, the reason that this documentary is so compelling and so popular, I think, even now, and this topic is so popular, is because nobody can really understand why. Why? How could anybody just walk away from the game when they were still productive, when they were still in their prime, just like Barry Sanders was?
Well, one of the reasons was that the Lions were bad.
Oh, yeah.
They were bad. They had a couple of playoff runs, and they had great success. The Silverdome, a lot of people forget how wonderful the Silverdome was in terms of the passion and the Lions fans, because there were so many years of misery before, and there was been many years of misery since. Of course, this year they're having a great year. But when Sanders played, he was a one-man show at the end of his career. That was part of the problem. They got rid of a lot of guys, or they wouldn't sign guys, or it was more of an organizational meltdown as opposed to Barry, not wanting to break any or be compared to Jim Brown or whatever. It wasn't like that. It was like he just lost passion for the sport. He was getting beat up. Like I know you said he was in great shape. He was in great shape. But when you're the one-man show and you're expected to carry the entire team on your shoulders, and he did that for many years, but when you're losing, and they were losing a lot, it wasn't fun anymore. And I
football too, Shawnee, football too is a 100% injury factor. You're 100% guaranteed to become injured at some point playing football.
So there were two poignant moments actually in the documentary, and I'm not going to give them but it might have been one of the big factors as well of why he walked away in terms of health. There were other guys hurt that may have affected him and affected the team and what have you. You may remember one of them, Mike Utley, which was a terrible injury, but there were a few, and that was documented as well. The other thing that just blew my mind that I did forget was I believe it was his rookie year. He had a chance to break or at least win the rushing title. He had a quarter to go, and he was only like 10 yards short of breaking it. Christian Okoye of Kansas City was leading at that time, and they kept a chart throughout the game to monitor what he needed. Essentially took himself out of the game and let another guy finish the game for a quarter.
Yeah.
My thoughts is like, Barry. He's like, no, coach, it's okay.
I mean, his whole line was deploring him. Please come back.
Well, they were, and they interviewed those guys, and they were like, but they understood because they said you had to understand Barry, and Barry, like that's who Barry was. It wasn't about the awards. The Heisman Trophy. There was a great section about the Heisman Trophy, and what a wonderful year he had at Oklahoma State, but also just in terms of the moment that his dad, who was featured throughout this documentary. Some people would think he's nuts. Other people would say he was overbearing. And then other people had said he just loved his son, play football. It was fascinating, actually, the dad component in this. When you watch the documentary, you'll understand what I'm saying, because he was hard on Barry in terms of expectations, but also taught him the work ethic of what it took to be as great as he was.
Something that you said a little bit ago reminded me of another guy who retired perhaps a little bit early, and that was Sandy Koufax. And Koufax retired, and I remember him at his retirement kind of address to the media. He said, I don't like the fact that I have to take a shot every day, to pitch, and what that's going to do to my body. And the fact that Sanders, the fact that his body was getting beat up all the time. Playing on a bad team, what's the point? Like, I don't want to be, not able to walk later on in my life. I want to be able to have my body and have my health.
Well, and I think he had 5 boys. That was the cool thing at the end of the documentary. They were back in London, England, but he had his sons with him. It was interesting because they were doing the interview. It was really cool how it was done. I really loved how they did it, and asking him, like reiterating, why did you quit? Do you have regrets? What did Grandpa think? It was cool. I loved how they did it. It was a little different than what you'd be used to seeing in a documentary. It just showed what a great father he was and just what kind of kids he has, who are actually, some of them are really good football players in their own right.
Yeah.
So it was a really humanized, and he did. You never heard a bad thing about Barry Sanders.
Nope.
An intricacy that he always had was he just handed the ball to the ref, or he flipped the ball to the ref. There were never any spikes. And he told a great story of why that happened. And it was related to what his father told him. Yeah. It was really good.
Was that the act like you've been there before story? Was that the act like you've been there before story?
Yeah. Yeah. I always loved watching Barry Sanders. He was not on my favorite team.
No.
But he was must-see TV.
Well, recently, I mean, as we record this, we're just past Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving. And I can remember the old days watching Walter Payton play on American Thanksgiving and watching Barry Sanders play on Thanksgiving. And it's just like, those were the moments that I loved watching football. Those special days. You will see
those moments again, Howie, in this documentary, because I remember some of those Thanksgiving moments, and they had some of the runs. Yeah. He's the only player I know that could run 40 yards to gain 3.
Oh, yeah, it's true. It's true.
Tecmo Bowl, a video game.
Yeah.
And you go up, you go down, you go up, you go down. That was Barry Sanders.
Well, the fact that he was able to get positive yardage out of some of those plays was in itself a victory.
Well, that was actually the highlight of that documentary, was just seeing how great he was again. Like, we take it for granted sometimes, our superstars.
Yeah.
But to see what he did and not have the talent on a lot of those teams, was a real credit to him. And
absolutely.
And also just the way the game was played back then. It was a different game.
Oh,
where the running backs were so valued and now they're
Yeah.
so undervalued,
Yes.
yet you need them
Yeah.
to win.
Yeah.
It's remarkable what's happened.
It's true.